There we go. All right, eventually we'll get this technology to work, I promise. Joe and I are so excited to be here this morning, and let's talk a little bit about how we're going to structure this next section. So we want to do a couple things. We want to talk about what is NASA doing today, and how do you and your students get involved with that. We're going to talk about STEM and the work that we're doing at the agency that can engage you in your classrooms. And probably most important and the most fun part, we're going to hear about Joe, his background, his life experiences, his life on board Space Station 2 years ago. And throughout that all, we want to take your questions. So if you'll see up there on the screen, you can log into that code, arc.cnf.io. You can ask a question, and more importantly, you can vote up questions that are already in there. I'll confess that I already know some questions I think you're going to ask me, and they're in there, but we want you to vote these up so that the ones that we talk about are the things that really make a difference. So that first opening video talked about, the anticipation of going, and where are we going, and what's going on. And I think maybe we'll start with, why don't we ask Joe to talk a little bit about your background. You always knew you were going to be an astronaut, right? It was just a simple path, and just, no problems, it was easy to go, right? Why don't we let you talk a little bit about that?
All right, good morning. This is a pretty unique experience with all this fancy I.O. and question asking. So if you're looking at your phone, I won't be offended. Unlike your students, if they're looking at their phone, you're probably not too happy about that. But anyway, this is pretty cool, and if we seem like we're winging it, it's because we want this to be interactive, so we'll see where the discussion takes us. So a little bit about myself. I've been with NASA since 2004. Before that, I was a middle and high school teacher in Florida, so yeah. And yeah, great. That's kind of what I looked like before I came to NASA. I don't know why you guys are laughing, but I was a SoCal kid. You can see, just like anybody else, like to play baseball. I had the nice hairdo when I was in the 7th grade. How many people here are under the age of 26? Okay, the SEEC's been going on for 26, and you guys were barely being born, so it's been going on for a while. Decided to cut my hair and join the United States Marine Corps Reserves while I was in college. And then in that bottom, I guess that's the right, maybe the left, that's when I was a teacher and I couldn't afford a haircut. And so, as you know, it's not an easy profession. So that's what I looked like before I joined NASA. If we can go to the next slide, please. We're going to get there. So, I've talked about, people think everybody knows they want to be an astronaut as soon as they're born, and that's what they're going to do. So I made a lot of bad choices in my life, and it's important for us to realize that we can learn from our mistakes. But if I were to show this list to my father, he did not like me growing up. So, in high school, I liked metal shop. It was fun. So I wanted to do it every year. Instead of being a well-rounded individual, I did that. I did not want to go to college. I wanted to make money, because money is important. So I told my dad I'm not going to college. He convinced me otherwise. I joined the Marine Corps, which is not any parent's, first choice for their child. It's a scary, dangerous thing. I was confused, so I went from the Marine Corps to the Peace Corps, two totally different organizations. And again, my dad, my parents were born in Puerto Rico. They moved to the States to get us, the Puerto Ricos, está aquí, all right.
Latinos.
Yeah, well, you got flags. Latinos are crazy. You guys are going to have fun with that. Wait till tomorrow night. So, of course, being a volunteer, we all know what that means. You don't get paid. My dad's like, I didn't come here for you not to get paid. And then I became a manager of a research island out in the middle of nowhere. And so we thought that was kind of weird. And then the biggest mistake, of course, was becoming a school teacher. Because you cannot find a profession.
We are taping this, by the way.
Sorry, I'm just speaking the truth to you. You can't find a profession in which you need to work harder than anybody else, not be as appreciated as anybody else, and probably not be as compensated as anybody else. So, not the smartest choice in my life. But as I reflect back on my life, I see that those bad choices turned out to be okay. when I interviewed to become an astronaut, we had a 1-hour in-person interview, and 30 minutes of that was talking about high school and my experience with the metal shop and how that showed to that group that I could work with my hands, I was comfortable doing something else than reading a book. The Marine Corps gave me operational experience, which is what we do every day. The Peace Corps experience is just like being, out working with the Russians is international cooperation. Living in the Bahamas showed that I could live in a very small area, like the International Space Station. So that was helpful. And then, of course, being a school teacher, when I came in 2004, NASA was looking at hiring a few educators. Myself, Ricky Arnold, and Dottie Metcalf-Lindenberger, we were selected as educators to become full-time astronauts. And we can talk more about the value of being an educator and an astronaut, but I can't think of a better job to prepare you to become an astronaut. So now, I show that list to my dad, and I tell him it was all part of my master plan to become an astronaut. For many years, I was the person that was kind of a disappointment, and now I'm the rock star of the family. This is a list. It's not a formal NASA list. It's nothing super unique, but I know a lot of you have phones, so if you want to snap a picture of it. But when we talk about our students and preparing them to go out into the world, it doesn't matter what they want to be. If they want to be an astronaut, of course, we're promoting STEM, but if they want to be outside of STEM, these are the types of skills that I think we need as teachers to stress in our classrooms beyond the technical part. I'm not going to go through them all, but you'll recognize them. It's what you use in the classroom. It's what we think, and what I think anybody should be able to do if they're going to get the job that they love and they want to excel in. So that's enough about me.
Oh, it's so not enough about you. We're going to hear all about Joe for a good portion of this conversation because there's me and then there's Joe Acaba in a blue flight suit, so we know what's more interesting. So we do want to make sure that you are asking questions or voting up the questions that are out there. That's going to come in, and I like how Joe put it. We know things we want to cover. We haven't exactly figured out what order that's going to be. It's going to somewhat be based on the conversation that you guys bring forward. Just like in the classroom, you can have a plan, and then you have reality, right? And so we are here, and we want to fit this to fit your needs and the time together. I think, Joe, the next place, well, actually, let's talk for just a second. Why do we do the work that we do? And so, if you look at what NASA is all about, right? We're about putting humans in space. We're about understanding the Earth. We're understanding about other planets. Those are great opportunities for us to be able to connect the students with STEM. And so what you see here, this is the NASA's vision and mission when it comes to STEM engagement. So we immerse students in our work, enhance STEM literacy, and inspire the next generation to explore. And then these three focus areas really drive, particularly the first two, really drive the investments and the time we spend at NASA. And so I just want to say a special thanks to Space Center Houston for organizing this. To be able to come with nearly 600 educators from around the world is really a privilege for us. And the energy, this is probably my 5th or 6th, we were just talking about, I think we both have been here somewhere in the 6, 7, 8 SEECs maybe over time. My first one was almost 20 years ago. At that one I came and I talked about how someday Space Station is going to do all these cool things for the classroom, and so to hear William talking about 20 years of continuous life aboard Space Station, we'll hear more about that in a second from Joe. It's a chance for us to really kind of connect with what's NASA doing in your classrooms. So 3 focus areas: unique opportunities for students who contribute to NASA's work, and I'll talk some more about that in a little while later. And then that second one, a diverse future workforce with authentic learning experiences. And I think there's some examples and some resources we can connect for you that will help you with those things. There's a lot of passion for it. We talk about Artemis and going, sending the next man and the first woman to the moon. What an opportunity that is for the kids in your classrooms to be able to be a part of that, to maybe their family and their friends to be connected to something I think that could be truly monumental for us as a society. With that, why don't we let's hear a little bit. People reminded me that 2 years ago, somebody up on stage was in space and actually talking to you live. How many of you by any chance were here at SEEC 2 years ago?
I was a lot taller back then.
Well, we're going to have a picture of him in space, right? He's going to talk a little bit about his time in space, and you can get what was his crew like. So why don't we roll that next number? It's very dark in space.
Very tough. All right. So I came back, it's right around 2 years ago that I returned. I was lucky on my last 2 flights to fly with the Russians. Mr. Harris, missed any Russians here? We didn't do a Dobre Utra, so another good morning in Russian. So took off on a Soyuz vehicle, just like the shuttle. It takes you that 8.5 minutes to get to space. That's what it looks like out the little window. It's pretty awesome. And of course, it's going to the International Space Station. My first flight on the space shuttle was to bring up the last set of solar arrays. So it's always great to go back. The Soyuz is very, very small. And so when you first get to the space station, everybody's super happy because now you finally have some room. But the reason why we are there, and the reason that we're here today to talk to you about space is to do research. We do hundreds of experiments in every expedition. We are looking, the International Space Station is a national lab, which means about half of the work is NASA work, looking how do we explore, go farther out into our universe, and the other half is doing work that applies to life here on Earth. I was growing some great veggies up there. It was delicious. When you get some fresh vegetables after a while, it is a nice thing. But if we're going to go to Mars, we need to know how to grow our own food. We had a lot of interactions with schools. This is a program with MIT where they're programming these small satellites. This is a pretty cool experiment that's going on now, continues to go on, where we can eject small payloads out from the space station. So it's an opportunity for students, universities, to get things up into space at a better price, and you can get a pretty cool experiment going on. The humans, we are also an experiment. We've been going to space for a long time, but we're still learning about the human body, how it reacts in space. So we're constantly doing, giving blood samples, collecting urine. We can save it in this very cool freezer, and then we bring all that stuff back. Because we're in that environment, and we'll talk more about Christina, who's been up there for almost a year, we have to exercise every day for about 2 hours. So we have this resistant exercise device that it feels just like you're lifting weights here on Earth. So we have that available to us. We also have a treadmill and a stationary bicycle to do the cardiovascular work. You gotta wear a bungee cord, otherwise you would just kind of bounce off in space. So it's a little bit different, but it's amazing. It feels just like you're running here back at home. That's the way it was. It was kind of on the wall. And so you just don't know if you're on the wall, if you're upside down. And this is really an exciting time. I think a lot of people think that NASA is not doing much in space. A lot of people think since the space shuttle retired that we're not going to space anymore. But we're working with the commercial partners. Right now, these were shots of the commercial vehicles that bring up the supplies that we need. But again, we're working hard with SpaceX and Boeing to launch humans again from the United States out in Florida, so that's coming up. But it's a constant resupply of vehicles coming up. Some things are easier, you can just throw bags around. Some things are more difficult as they float away from you and escape. And then of course, spacewalking is kind of cool, it's kind of scary. I was fortunate enough to do 2 on my space shuttle flight and 1 on this last expedition. We did about 5 during the time that I was up there. When we talked about the work that this last crew has done, especially Christina and Jessica, they've done more spacewalks than I've done in my entire career in 1 mission. So there's a lot going on as we repair the space station and put new experiments out there. So it's a constant kind of upkeep of the home and the laboratory that we have on the International Space Station. Being on the end of the arc that's pretty cool. You get a nice view of the Earth as they're flying you around. But when you're only hanging on by your feet, it's not the most comfortable feeling out there. So it's always nice to come back in. Just want to give you a few shots of what it looks like from the space station. That was the cupola. It's an amazing window that we have, but not a bad place to live and work for 6 months. The kind of the feeling that we have while we're up there, I want to share that with you, and I hope that you can take that back to your students. But our planet is incredible. If it's nighttime, daytime, you're always seeing something different. The auroras are just spectacular. So you never get tired of looking out the window. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of time to do that. But when you do, it really is amazing. And, the goal is to have everybody have the opportunity to go to space. And that's really what we're working for. And then next thing you know, you got crew members that are coming and going, and it was our time to leave. You're in the big space station, and then you go back into the very, very small soil. So if you don't like your buddies, you don't like people, you don't like small spaces, don't fly with the Russians, because it's tight. But it's a great vehicle. This is the view out the window. If you don't know that's the way it's supposed to happen, you think you're going to die. When the parachute opens, you're very, very happy, but it's probably the most violent part of the return. And I came back right around this time, so it was wintertime out in Kazakhstan. But the Russians are amazing. They are there when you land. They get you out of that vehicle as quickly as they can. They wrap you up like a little baby on a little cradle. So nice and comfortable, and then within 24 hours, you're home, just like Christina. She'll be home sometime tomorrow. So that was just a brief kind of look at what it's like to be in space for 6 months.
So I have some bad news for Joe and Daniel. When we give educators an app where they can ask questions, we'll need about another hour, if that's okay.
All right, this is not going anywhere today.
There's a lot of questions, which is awesome, right? And I've been kind of looking through those. And we'll take those. Feel free to continue to vote them up, so we make sure that we ask the ones that reach the most of you. But a couple, Joe, just to follow up on the questions you talked about. So how did living in space change your perspective?
It's interesting because growing up, for some reason, my dad always instilled the value of the environment. He would take us camping every year. I'm not sure if it's because he liked the outdoors or it was almost free. Camping is a good way to spend a vacation, but we spent a lot of time in the outdoors, which is why I studied geology. And so I've always been a geologist out there. If you rock people, we couldn't do anything else, right? Just like teachers, you couldn't do anything else from teaching. So I've always had this appreciation for the outdoors, but when you go to space and you see the planet from 250 miles away, you get a greater appreciation for how fragile it is. People can call it the blue marble, you can call it whatever you want, but when you see the Earth and you see this really thin atmosphere, and you can see those countries that have a lot of deforestation, you can see what's happening, to the oceans. Not that it changed my perspective, it just reinforced it and made it more real on how fragile our planet is and how hard we need to work to protect it, and it's just something I can't stress enough.
That's great. So the next question I want to ask, actually, I want to also answer with you is, who was the most influential teacher in your life, and what did they do for you?
It's a good question.
Especially in this audience.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
I will only because I did give. So I was thinking about. Let me start over again. So when I was a high school junior, I moved from California to Texas, and as you can imagine, showing up in a new school in November of your junior year is not the optimal time to make a move. I started in chemistry, and there were two Dr. Norrises, and they were husband and wife. She taught physics, he taught chemistry. So Mr. Dr. Norris versus Mrs. Dr. Norris, right? You described them. Mr. Dr. Norris was a great chemistry teacher, and he was the person that I connected with. I liked chemistry, and then I ended up taking chemistry 2 the next year. And I'll tell you a quick little snapshot. When I was in high school, people said, "Oh, you're good at math and science. You should go off and be an engineer." And Mr. Dr. Norris was part of that process. So I went off to Texas A&M. Spent my first year. I was hoping there'd be a few loops. When I say Texas A&M in Washington, D.C., almost never do I get a loop. So I know I'm back. For those of you who are not from Texas and you want to have a question to ask someone from A&M, we'll be happy to tell you all about it. I went off to A&M. I started in science and engineering because I was good at math and science. At the end of my freshman year, I switched to business because they dealt with people. And engineers sat and behind computer terminals or in lonely labs, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. But I tell people I didn't make a bad choice. I made an ignorant choice, right? And I just didn't know. You know, I think Joe was telling you some of the background he had, and each of us have backgrounds. And so the experiences you have, and the fact that you're here and you understand what NASA is, you're helping students make informed choices that will forever alter how their path goes forward. Turns out, went off to A&M, switched to business. I ended up in management. I interviewed with Johnson Space Center as a college sophomore. Started here in the summer of 1987, and 32 years later, still here at NASA. Most of my life, of the 32 years I've been at NASA, 28 of them have been here at Johnson Space Center. My family still lives about 10 minutes down the road. I fly home from DC virtually every weekend. And I can't imagine my life without the teachers that prepared me and for the opportunities that made me who I am today. So it is cool to see how teachers really do make this long-lasting impression. Joe?
That's a good story. Terrible choices you made.
Terrible choices.
Yeah, so my teacher was kind of on the opposite end, and this is, you know, I was a math and science teacher, so don't be insulted, but, you know, the teacher, I think that, you know, I'm getting ready to insult you, so don't laugh. You know, the teacher that I think most inspired me growing up was Mr. Walters, who was my metal shop teacher. And so, yeah, I know, that dude is taking your money and all that kind of stuff. But I think the reason why he was very influential in my life, and I think that you can do this in your classroom as well, he had us do crazy stuff in the classroom. We were welding, we were doing, you know, working with the lathe, we were melting things that most teachers would not want to do in the classroom. But he was teaching us about responsibility, being responsible for our own actions. He taught me a skill, you know, how to work with my hands. I was good at math and science, but this was something totally different. And that's what we do in space. We just have fun. Yeah, great. Look at that on there. Now we're going to think we don't do anything up there. We're talking about science. There go your tax dollars. But you can't have Halloween without a pumpkin, so. I told you we were winging it today.
I saw that video and I was like, what is this video? So I'm so glad that it came up and I got a chance to hear more about
You know,
it.
we are superheroes. That's what astronauts are. So just to wrap up that question, so yeah, this is what you do in the classroom. You have a plan, and then you never know where it's going to go. So Mr. Walters was cool. So when you're teaching, you know, science out there, don't be afraid to do things that you might be uncomfortable doing because you don't trust, you know, what your students can do. Because when you give them that responsibility, they will take it seriously, and they will amaze you.
That's really good. There's still lots of questions in here. I'll go to the number one question. 54 people. Looking into the rest of 2020 and beyond, what things are NASA doing that my students can participate in? Nilfa, why don't we go to the slide that has the 5 priorities for the year? Yeah, so in non-system engagement, we stepped back and said, what are those things that are going to happen across NASA in FY20, in calendar 20, that we think that we have resources that I think would connect with you and your students? And so these are 5 focus areas for us. First one is the Artemis program. We're going to talk more about Artemis. We'll show you, you saw a little bit in that 90-second opening. We'll show you a longer video later that talks about what are the elements, how are we sending the next man and the first woman to the moon. But in that, we're going to talk about Artemis. You're going to hear us talking about Artemis. You can go to a site that I'll show you in a few minutes and learn more about Artemis. You can find content about it. The second one, commercial crew. So Joe talked about, just very briefly, one of his current jobs is he actually is the astronaut who's assigned to work with SpaceX. It's really important for us to work with SpaceX and Boeing as we deliver mechanisms for Americans to be launched on American rockets from American soil to our International Space Station. He told you a little bit about his time in Russia. Talks more about that with Christina as well. But we want to have our own mechanisms and abilities to do that. So what resources do we have that can help you talk to your students about that? You can see engineering challenges, a digital badging, virtual reality, and some other things. The middle one, I think both William and Dana talked about this. This is the 20th anniversary of the International Space Station. We'll show you some slides on how you can do, there's some what we call STEM demonstrations that are things, in fact there's one that Joe helped us produce while he was in space, and we want to help students be part of that process. If maybe, how many of you voted for, actually, oh, there you go, there's this demonstration, I'm thinking of her. So you can see this guy down the bottom corner, you know who he is, and you can see him, kind of this video playing in the background. It's about a 3 or 4 minute video. You can find all these at nasa.gov/demonstrations. They're all free. We'd love to have you use them. We'd love to have you follow us. We'll talk about that in a second. Can you go back? See, by the way, we have a round of applause for Nilofer, because this is not a presentation where you go like slide 2, slide 3, slide 4. This is like somewhere in that list of 37 slides. Can you find that slide? Because now we're talking about that. So she has a tough job, and she's doing a great job. So that March 2020, how many of you by any chance voted last week, 2 weeks ago? How many helped us vote from the 9 down to 3? Good, awesome. We had 28,000 students participate where they submitted an essay on what they would name the March 2020 rover. And so we got down to 9. I think we had, when I last looked, there was like almost 500,000 people had voted on the top 3. We released those names, and then we'll name the rover, I think it's next month, and then we'll launch it later this summer. So that's something your kids can be involved with, not only just in naming it, but as it launches, as we get the first imagery back from it. And last one, 50th anniversary of Earth Day. You know, it's awesome that SEEC is 26 years old, but twice as old as Earth Day, right? And it is a big blue marble. And so what NASA resources do we have that can connect for you as we get ready for that info? So let's go, what's the next slide? I think, let's talk about the, yeah, there you go. Thank you, perfect. So another great way for you to find resources is a website that we've created. We're still, like with most things, we're working on it. So stem.nasa.gov. If you have ever tried to find something at the agency when it comes to STEM, sometimes it can be challenging. It's all over the place, and Google is your friend. We are trying to help you find things you may not even know you were looking for. So if you go to stem.nasa.gov, you can kind of see that little gray box there. Inside, it allows you to filter the things you're interested in to kind of give you a sense of what's out there. I'll tell you, there's a lot of stuff out there. And we're still trying to, we would love to do some sort of crowdsourcing initiative where we have people help us figure out what's the best content so you can find it, or actually have an interesting conversations with the Library of Congress about using some of their technology and experiences and helping us curate the content we have out there. So if you invite me back next year, I'm hoping I'll be able to show you an even neater, cooler way that you can help us actually fine tune it. At least the content is now in one place. Now you can help us figure out how best to use it. The other thing you can do is NASA. So how many of you subscribe to NASA Express? It comes out every Thursday. I'm ashamed for those of you who have not. I mean, you're probably the first time. Terrible. I know it's embarrassing.
Sign up today.
Yeah. This must be your first time at SEEC. You just didn't happen to know about it. Now you know about it. We would love every Thursday about 42,000 educators, some students around the world get information on what's happening at NASA. So there's no way I can tell you about all the stuff happening at NASA. We really would need a good portion of the day. But you can go find out what's about to happen. And if you're involved in national efforts, we also are interested in sharing your story through there. If you're doing something for 27 educators in your hometown, that's awesome. Good job, keep doing that. That's probably not what we're gonna put in here. What we're looking for is things that people can get involved with wherever they might be. So let us know if you have some ideas there. And the next slide. So we'd love for you to follow us. We're one of the big, I think we are the biggest NASA Pinterest page, which is no surprise given who the primary audience that we serve. We're on Facebook and all these other places. At the end of the photo, we would love to get some sort of selfie where Joe and I'll stand over there and push this out on our STEM engagement pages. So maybe you'll find yourself later today. You can zoom in closely. The next one I'll show you, NASA's Museum Alliance. We're actually getting ready to rename this because really it's an out-of-school learning website. So you can see that little pie chart down the bottom kind of shows you the people who are involved in it. Yes, there are big organizations like Space Center Houston, in that orange section, Museum and Science Center, but there's planetariums, observatories, libraries, challenger centers, you can see aquariums, after-school programs. And our goal is to provide you content. So individual educators probably get grades. I think your best source is stem.nasa.gov. If you are leading an after-school program or you're involved in a consortium of groups, you might want to look into the Museum Alliance and becoming a member. You can see that we have 2,300 people who are members that represent 1,200 plus organizations, a little over 1,000 here in the United States. all across the country. We would love to give you information about what's going on in particular if you're involved. Is that our last slide? I think so.
So Mike, with that, is that something where educators can team with those alliances to help them out in their classroom? That's always the hard part for an educator, is to find those resources.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, and that's exactly right. We would love for you to go visit those places. The other places, as you mentioned, reminded me, there's something called EPDC, Educator Professional Development Collaborative or Collective. I always forget what the C stands for. I know.
Acronyms out there.
Someone over here knows which is the C? Collaborative. See, that's why you have a team of people that can help you with these things. So, right there. Okay, I wasn't sure what they were talking about. So EPDC is a great opportunity for you to also get content, and they provide services all across the country. So there's a lot of things out there. And now I've forgotten what we're looking at.
Looks like people are getting ready to come home. So,
yes.
So this, would have been happening, while we were all comfortable sleeping last night. So this is really fresh video of the crew coming home last night. What they were showing is kind of a representative key to the International Space Station. You don't have a key to turn it on, just in case you weren't sure about that. But they handed the key over to their crewmates. And so again, for Christina, it's been 328 days. She's an underachiever. It took me 3 missions to get to 306. She did it in 1, so that's pretty impressive. And look at her, this is pretty cool, just getting home. I'm sure she's excited to be home. I'm sure she is tired. You don't realize how tired you are until you get off of that Soyuz vehicle and you can finally relax. This is the first time I've seen this footage, and I'm very happy to have her back. I'm sure she's happy to get back home, but she did an amazing job up on the space station. So we're very proud of her being a first-time flyer and coming back with her crewmates. So right now she'll be on a plane coming back to Houston. It's a quick turnaround. You can see all the stats. She will be going out now and sharing her experience, which is extremely unique. So very exciting day. It's always a good day when you get your crew members back home safely.
So what's perfect about this, Joe, is let me for the audience, they may not. I have 2 questions for you. One is, as you watch Christina get ready, it's got to bring back memories for you, because it's just 2 years ago that you were going through the same experience. But not only that, you also spent some time being NASA's representative, the big grand poobah in Russia for our interrelations. You spent 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, something like that. So why don't you talk a little bit about your perspectives as both a crew member and as well as working with the Russians, what that might be like?
Yeah, so as a crew member, again, this is a very exciting time. While we all love being in space, there's nothing better than coming home to your friends and family. We're always going to have this attachment to Earth. So it's really, and it's kind of bittersweet, because you never know if you'll have an opportunity to come back. Again, when that parachute opens, I don't care how many times you do it, it is extremely violent. If you didn't know what was happening, you would think that you were falling over a cliff in a car, and if you weren't strapped in, it'd be a really bad day. But when you get out, and even in the middle of the winter in Kazakhstan, the wind feels good. If the sun is out, it feels good. Gravity sucks. It's heavy. You probably don't feel well, and you wonder, how do we live on this planet? Because everything, your head is heavy. It's really, really difficult, but you adapt very quickly. So when she landed, I'm sure she didn't feel great, but it is every hour after your return, you feel significantly better. So by the time she gets here to Houston, she'll be feeling much better, stability, the vestibular system. And then as the NASA representative in Star City, my main job was to make sure the crew members that were out there were getting the training they needed, and their housing was taken care of, and they could train. And one of the jobs was to go out to the landings to help recover the crew members. And so it's great when you see your buddies coming home. When it's the winter time, it's a little bit more challenging. The Russians do an amazing job in the middle of winter. They're getting in helicopters, going out in the middle of nowhere, in the snow, in the rain, it does not matter. They are there. The helicopters are sometimes a little frightening because they've been around for a while. But it's really good to see. When I came home, the weather was so bad, they weren't sure if we were gonna have to wave off an extra day. And so our flight surgeon, who is there, wants to be there when we land, had to get into an all-terrain vehicle that the Russians always send out. So he spent about 16 hours in an ATV, kind of an open back ATV, just driving out to the landing site, not very comfortable in case the helicopters couldn't make it. And then he gets there, and here come the helicopters. So, we've got to have a backup plan.
I guess I won't whine about it being cold here, so.
No, this is a beautiful day in Russia.
So when you land, we pretty much bundle you on a plane and fly you back. And so if these guys about 3 a.m. tomorrow morning want to be stalking outside of Ellington Field, they could actually see Christina drive home, right? I mean, it's possible.
Yeah. Don't try to get in. Security will not allow that. So I don't advise you trying to do that. But you know, what's cool about being an astronaut is, you know, we showed the slide, you know, where she said, you know, I'm not an astronaut, you know, but I still do extraordinary things. So as an astronaut, we are just regular people. You know, I live in my neighborhood. I had to take my trash out last night. We're just fortunate enough to have, I would say, an extraordinary job. But, you know, we're regular people, and I would argue that you guys are much more extraordinary because of the impact that you have on students. I'm not saying that because I'm here at SEEC. You know, it's a true statement. My neighbor right across the street, she teaches school, and you know, it's what she does every day that's important, and it's what you guys are doing every day. So I think being here shows that you're trying to make your classroom better, and you don't do it for yourself, you don't do it for the money, you're doing it for your students. So it's, again, I applaud you, and I'm so happy that you're all here today.
So one question is, 36 votes. You kind of covered this a little bit, but I think it's worth maybe a little longer answer. So can you describe the first 10 minutes of how your body felt once you returned to Earth from space? I mean, it's really perfect since we're talking about Christina.
Yeah, it's terrible.
That's terrible.
Terrible. So I would say the first, you know, and everybody's different, every astronaut is different, but going up into space, the first, you know, day is not great. For me personally, I'm always on the edge of getting sick. You know, I don't quite get sick, but just not feeling right. As, you know, the fluid in your body shifts because you're in a microgravity environment. You know, they say astronauts have big heads. In space, we literally do because all this fluid is going up, and so you feel this pressure. You know, you can stand on your head for a while today while you're out there, and you can feel what it feels like. You know, I tell students not to do it for too long, but you know, you guys are crazy. Try it tomorrow night at the party and see what it feels like. But then your body adjusts, and then coming home, you know, again for me, and everybody's different, I just don't feel great. And when we landed, you know, at first I felt okay, you know, everything was pretty stable, but to get out of the Soyuz, you have to get out of your kind of side seat into the commander seat in the middle so that they can pull you out of the vehicle. Just moving my head to shift seats, I just felt like the whole capsule was falling over. So it was super uncomfortable, so I went from feeling pretty good to, I'm not sure if I'm gonna throw up right now. And so it's really, it's an odd feeling. And then the guy I flew with, Mark Vanderheiden, I mean, he got out of the vehicle and he felt like he could go run laps. So everybody is different, but again, what's amazing is how quickly the body adapts. We did this experiment called the field test, thinking about what we can do when we get to Mars. And so as soon as we land and we get out of our suits, we're in this tent, they have different things they want us to do. Just, you know, sit down, then stand up. Walk with your eyes closed. Do that little sobriety test thing. And when you do it, when you first land, you know, we're kind of stumbling, hard to stand up. And then we'll do it about halfway home, and we'll do another test. They have people waiting for us. And then we do it when we come to Houston. And if you were to watch all three of those videos, you would not realize that all that was happening, you know, in the span of about 20 hours. So it can be a painful thing, just because it's very uncomfortable, but you adapt pretty quickly.
I wish we had those videos, that would be fun.
Yeah, I know. Maybe we'll practice that Friday night.
So I'm looking at these questions, and so we're talking about space. I have to ask this question: what's the best prank you did or experienced in space? The best prank. Do you have any ideas on that one?
The best prank, well, I mean, you saw us dress up like superheroes, that was fun. I think there are different crew members. We didn't do any like serious pranks on people. One that I wish I had done, so I just need to go back. We all sleep in our crew quarters, and you just sleep in a bag, because you don't need a bed, it's super comfortable. And there's 4 of them that are in node 2, so one's on the floor, so you kind of feel like you're laying down. There are 2 on the side, so you sleep standing up, and then one's on top. But you can't tell the difference. But I think it would be good one day just to go in there while somebody's asleep, take them out of their crew quarters, and just like put that bag and just, I don't know, their Soyuz or something else, and just have them wake up and go, what the heck just happened? So, but I'm kind of glad, because there are some pranksters in our office, and there's a lot you can do to people up there, but there's a fine line between having fun and angering somebody, and you don't want to cross that line when you're stuck in a really small space for 6 months. So, but it is fun. We have a good time.
So that probably is a good segue to this very first question. So what's the most important skill that we should teach to the Artemis and the Mars generation?
What I said.
Most important skill that we should teach to the Artemis and Mars generation?
I don't know. What do you guys think?
Cooperation.
Cooperation?
Actually, while he's thinking about it, let me also, Peggy Whitson, when she was in space, we had a partnership with the USDA and 4-H, and we came up with a series called the Expeditionary Skills for Life. And they came up with 6 aspects that crew members need, particularly as we think about long duration. Joe's first flight was on a space shuttle. Then his next 2 flights were long duration. So imagine though he'd be going to Mars for 3 years. So how you get along with people is pretty critical. And so Peggy was really passionate about connecting our efforts with 4-H and these more what I'll call soft skills. The videos are still up and available. They're still pretty cool. I was looking at some for another work just a couple weeks ago. So if you do a Google search, expeditionary skills or Peggy Whitson 4-H, it'll pop up. Some great resources. Other thoughts you have?
Yeah, I think going along with cooperation, it's probably working as a team, which is cooperation. I think in America, we always talk about leadership. How do you become a good leader? And it's important to lead and lead. But I would say it's probably more important to learn how to be a follower. And so when we do our training, we have activities in which they want you to be the leader of an expedition, but they also want you to learn how to be the follower, which doesn't mean you just kick back and just do whatever the leader says. A good follower is interacting with the leader, offering help, and as a team, making yourself be successful. So I've had the opportunity to do, not only space flights, but I lived underwater with the NEMO program. I was living in a cave not too long ago, in which we had to practice all of these skills. So you don't need to be, and I tell students when I go out, you don't need to be the smartest person out there, because there's always going to be somebody smarter, but there's no reason why you can't work harder than everybody else, but you got to be nice, and you got to be a good team player. If you're going to go to Mars, if Artemis is going to go to Mars, he's going to go to the moon, and then it's going to go on to Mars, if you're not nice, that expedition is going to suck. I mean, it's not going to be successful. So, to me, that's the number one thing. The technical skills are important, and you guys, I know that there's standardized testing, our favorite thing, right? We love it. That you have to do, but along the way, teach your students how to be a nice team player, and it's hard to do.
So Joe, I think you did a great job talking about the skills we need, and we were talking about our next mission, Artemis and going back to the moon and on to Mars. I think it's a good time for us to show about a 5-minute video. You might recognize the voice. It's Kelly Marie Tran, who was in the last couple of Star Wars movies, and so she'll tell you a little bit more about what we do at NASA. Oh wait, in the video you're going to show, why don't you guys go ahead and start running this? You'll find this available.
Between 1968 and 1972, America launched 9 human missions to the moon, 6 of which successfully touched down, allowing 12 men to walk on the lunar surface. NASA's next chapter of lunar exploration, called Artemis, has the task of not just going to the moon to create a long-term human presence on and around it, but also to prepare for ever more complex human missions to Mars. In short, everything we must be able to do here, we must first do here. So, what will an Artemis mission look like? Everything is designed and tested with our most important element in mind, the astronauts. This is their deep space, human-rated spacecraft called Orion, built in 3 parts. The crew module, where up to 4 astronauts will live and work throughout the flight. The service module, with life support systems for the crew and its own engine and fuel reserves. And a launch abort system, with engines capable of pulling the crew module to safety during launch should anything go wrong. To accomplish the task of launching our crew and heavy payloads, NASA is building the Space Launch System, comprising of a cargo hold, an exploration upper stage, a massive core stage, and 2 extended solid rocket boosters. Altogether, this is the world's most powerful rocket, and it exceeds the legendary Saturn V of the Apollo era in numerous ways. Sitting on the launch pad, the entire rocket, fully fueled, weighs just over 6 million pounds, 5.2 million of which is just the fuel. Once ignited, there is no stopping what comes next. All 4 RS-25 engines and the 2 solid rocket boosters come to life, thundering our crew upwards. 2 minutes after ignition, the solid rocket boosters are spent and released. 8 minutes after launch, the core stage is depleted and separated. The upper stage fires briefly, placing Orion into a parking orbit around the Earth. Here, the crew reconfigure the spacecraft and check systems to confirm everything is ready for deep space travel. With a go from mission control, the crew reignite the exploration upper stage engines to leave Earth entirely. The exact timing of this maneuver is critical to reach a speed that can escape Earth's gravitational pull, but also put Orion on a course that will intersect the moon days later. Once this burn is complete, the upper stage of the SLS is jettisoned and the crew aboard Orion coast for several days toward all that awaits them at the moon. Approaching the moon, we see the fundamental differences between Artemis and Apollo. Instead of requiring Orion to serve as an expendable lunar command module or to carry a constrained lunar lander, the Artemis missions will take advantage of a different approach, pre-staging. Everything needed for lunar missions will be positioned in advance by commercial and international partners. This includes rovers, science experiments, and human-rated systems on the surface. But it also includes a dedicated lunar station in orbit around the moon called Gateway. Here at this station, we can pre-stage a robust lunar lander and establish a strong communications relay. Designed with open standards, the Gateway can be expanded as new missions and partnerships develop, allowing multiple human missions on the moon at the same time and enabling ongoing science to be conducted even between human missions. The Gateway is also capable of adjusting its orbit to allow access to every part of the moon, something the Apollo missions could not do. But the real key in this approach is placing Gateway in a unique halo orbit to perfect the maneuvers needed for Mars missions. And with the growing list of commercial and international opportunities, Gateway is the ideal hub between Earth and all that lies beyond. Returning to our crew as they approach Gateway, the Orion must match the elliptical orbit of the station in order to successfully dock. Once on board, pre-selected crew members transfer to the lunar lander, while those assigned to Gateway remain on station. The lunar lander system itself is built for 3 unique steps: descending from the halo orbit of Gateway down to a low lunar orbit, descending from low lunar orbit to the surface, and once the lunar mission is complete, launching from the surface of the moon and ascending all the way back to the orbiting Gateway. Once back aboard the Orion spacecraft and undocked from Gateway, the crew fire their engine once to break out of the halo orbit, and then once again to sling the spacecraft around the moon, placing it on a multi-day trajectory back towards Earth. As they near the end of this journey, the service module is released, and the crew module is oriented heat shield first. Entering Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, the friction of air slows Orion considerably, while also subjecting it to temperatures of 5,000 degrees. With The Orion now at just 300 miles per hour, a series of parachutes uniquely tested and produced for this moment deploy, decelerating the craft to just 20 miles per hour for splashdown. With each successful mission, Artemis ushers in the next wave of men and women to explore our moon and prove that together we are ready to go beyond.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
I've not seen that before.
Yeah, I was hoping we decided to go with a longer video to tell you really what's in Artemis. Because sometimes we should, like the first 90-second one is, we should, that's a great feel-good video. This one kind of gets into what is this, and we hope that you'll follow along with us as we push out these videos and follow some of these these websites. You know, NASA has really had a lot of positive press lately for the work we're doing to reach underserved audiences, whether that's different diversity, different ethnic backgrounds, particularly with the all-female spacewalk this last fall, with Christina setting some records with her role. You know, Joe certainly has had his portion of that as well. When I think about what NASA can do for us as a country, for us as a world, it's pretty cool. And the work that you guys are doing to help us tell that story, to engage your students in that, is something that we don't take lightly or take for granted. So we're really grateful for you. There's so many more questions, and so many, they keep adding up, which is a great thing. I wish I had all day. I do want to just take through a couple of them, just while we have a minute or two, since they've been sitting up there. The first question is, what's with the new Space Force? Is it part of NASA? And I'm happy to kind of explain a little bit about that. So NASA is not part of Space Force. You know, I think when the president first started talking about that, people thought, is he for real? But actually, there's been a long series of conversations, really. In fact, our administrator used to be an Oklahoma congressman, and he had introduced some legislation to create a Space Corps. And it's interesting because you have Joe, who's part of the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is actually part of the Navy, and they have a special force. And so what they have recently done is create this Space Force, which is an arm of the Air Force. And so basically it's saying, we want a special group of people within the Air Force who are going to pay attention to all the things that we have in space. You know, our banking systems, things we take for granted, or how we get GPS, all those things are space-based. And so really thinking through, are we taking the right steps to be prepared defensively in those kinds of areas. So while NASA is not part of Space Force, we are the civilian part of what we do. What we do at NASA, we're doing it for the benefit of humankind. We're very open about that. We share our content with others. The Space Force has a different and distinct mission, and we do partner on some things, but for the most part, they're a separate entity.
And it sounds cool.
And it sounds really cool. Almost as cool as being an astronaut. The other question I want to answer is number 4, when will NASA recruit astronauts again, and can I apply? So if you happen to see, maybe 3 weeks ago, the last class of astronauts graduated. For the first time ever, we kind of had this public ceremony where they graduated. At the end of it, the administrator, Jim Bridenstine, announced that we plan to have another round of astronaut selections this spring. Probably, I've heard as early as March that the application period will be open. Last time we had 18,300 people apply. It was 3 times the number we'd ever had before, so it's huge. It shows you the power of the internet, it shows you the interest I think NASA has. So we expect even more. Last time it was open 6 or 8 weeks. This time it'll only be open for 4, so you want to pay attention. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, anybody here want to be an astronaut? Got a few people. So, you know, I was a middle school teacher. I was super happy teaching math and science, and you know, as a kid, yeah, I want to be an astronaut, but that's just not where life took me. And then, you know, a friend of mine said, hey, you know, NASA's looking to, you know, hire a teacher to become a full-time astronaut. And so I just went on the internet and looked up the requirements. I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that. You know, this is something I think I could do. And, you know, I just applied. And of course, you don't think you're gonna get it because I think we had a few thousand teachers that applied back then. So, you know, the odds are not great. But I went ahead and applied, and I was fortunate enough to get selected. And of course, with this last class, you know, there was a huge number, like Mike said, of people that applied. And when I came in, there was a special category for educators. We've gone away from that, where the educators are part of, you know, the rest of the scientists that apply. But what's different is now teaching experience counts as much as if you were working in a lab or doing something else as a scientist, an engineer, whatever it may be. So your teaching experience counts. I would encourage you to apply if it interests you. As we review the applications, I can't tell you there's a magic formula, but what's hard is that a lot of us as teachers, that's what you love to do, and you've done that your whole career. And as you know, when you're an astronaut, there's a lot of different things you have to do. You got to work with your hands. You've got to work in this unique environment. And so if there are folks out there that you think that you meet that type of requirement, I really encourage you to apply. I'll see applications from educators, and they're doing a great job in their classroom, but they haven't done much else besides that, which is not a knock on the educator. They're doing their job. But when you compare that with somebody else who's another scientist that has done various things that we think might make him a good astronaut, that's where the competition gets hard. So I encourage you to do things outside of your classroom. But if you've done things in your classroom that you think will highlight your ability to become an astronaut, make sure you go ahead and do that. But look at the application. The call for astronauts is coming out soon. Like I tell the students, you can't win if you don't play. So I applied and I just said I'm not going to get it, but I enjoy the process. So it's an exciting time, and I'm old. I'm not going to Mars, but some of you young folks here, you're part of this, what the administrator is calling the Artemis generation. I'm part of the Apollo shuttle generation, but this is a very new and exciting time. The turtles that graduated, they're in for quite the ride, and for anybody here that might get selected, this is a cool time to become an astronaut.
It really is. It's a great opportunity for you to be involved through all the different ways we've talked about. We're about out of time. We want to take a selfie before we go, but any closing thoughts, Joe, before we go take the selfie?
I can't believe the time has passed by. It was great to be here. Thanks for your questions. This is a new format for me. I'm one of the old people, so like some of you guys don't know what Pinterest is and all of that, but you'll learn. But thanks for coming out. And again, this really, conferences are great. They can be a lot of fun. You're going to have a lot of fun, but it really shows your dedication to what you are doing and the work you're doing for your students. I cannot thank you enough for doing that every day. I know it's hard. It is the hardest job that is out there, so just thanks, but please share what NASA is doing. It's a very unique organization. We have a lot to offer, and don't be afraid to get a little crazy in your classroom and challenge your students.
I'll just close by repeating Danny's quote earlier. I've known Danny for a long time, and it was a tragedy to lose her. But I'm not, this quote's true for everybody except for one person in this room, right? I'm not an astronaut, but I still get to do extraordinary things. And I hope that SEEC will help you, help your students become part of the Artemis generation and do extraordinary things. So with that, we're going to take a selfie, and then we'll get upstairs.